Dear audience, welcome to the show POWERchat. In today's episode, we will be discussing about ICT for development. Joining us today is Dr. Rohan Samarajiva, Chair of LIRNEasia. Please allow me to welcome him. Welcome to the show, Dr. Samarajiva. How have you been?
I'm good. I'm very happy to be here.
You have been here in Nepal for many times.
Oh, of course.
Could you tell us your impression of Nepal's development process?
Well, of course, throughout South Asia, we see a lot of good changes, people coming out of poverty. But my specialty is ICTs, telecommunications, information communication technology. And when I see these things, we are a research-based organization. We generally look at the data. So we don't have very good data on how ICTs are being used in Nepal, but we are going to be doing a survey. We have obtained the funds and we are working with ISOC Nepal, and we'll be doing this survey. We'll have the results by early next year. So when that happens, we'll be able to really tell you a good story. But right now, overall, Nepal is a good performer, fast, rapid growth. Lots of good things are happening, lots of potential. But of course, it's all countries, much more to be done.
Well, Dr. Samarajiva, you led many projects and programs in South Asia, especially in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, some projects in Africa, also contributing from your part to rest of the world in policy issues concerning ICT. How do you observe the state of access to ICT in Asia and South Asia as such?
Well, we must begin with our region. Our region has still got the largest concentration of poor people, right? That's sort of where we got to begin. And partly as a result of that, we don't have the most advanced infrastructure, right? So, we can't be looking at Korea or China and so on. We are working at a certain more basic level in terms of ICT connectivity. And now, of course, we are in the middle of the internet revolution. We did very well, our countries did quite well with regard to voice communication, right? When the mobile phone came, it's, you just roll out the network, the signal is there, people go buy the handsets and they talk to each other and they solve their problems. Now, what our surveys in the region showed was that they were keeping in touch with family, they were dealing with emergencies, they were even saving money or making money using this simple ability to communicate with other people. But now what we've got is a far more sophisticated phenomenon, which is not just voice, but the full potential of the internet. That is the ability to retrieve information, the ability to engage in transactions, to give information, to receive information, right? The whole thing, and communication, of course, right? But not just voice, communication in different ways. So in this kind of environment, it's a more challenging task, which involves different parts of government. So when I worked for the government of Sri Lanka, I was the regulator, and then I was responsible for doing economic reforms from an economic reforms ministry. Those days, our life was simpler. We simply had to get the network out. But now it's more complicated because we have to make sure that we not only have the network out, but that there are services that people really need, right? Agricultural information, safety information, various things that people need. And that's not an easy thing to do because sometimes what we think people need, they won't use. Sometimes what we think they don't need, they will use. Now, Nepal, for example, has got the highest per capita Facebook participation in all of South Asia, right? I don't know what people think about Facebook, but this is what the people want, right? Nepal is more like Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, all the ITU, the UN system numbers about internet users have a very peculiar feature. That is, whatever that number is, there are more Facebook users than internet users, which for most people will sound like a very odd statement because we think Facebook is a subset, is one application within internet. But there are so many people in Southeast Asia who only use Facebook. They don't do anything else. They keep in touch with family, they see pictures, they follow their celebrity film stars, singers.
Well, Dr. Samarajiva, you raised an important issue that the people's needs matter. How can the terminology ICT be understood in terms of empowering people?
Well, you see, different people give different meanings to development, right? In my case, I tend to privilege what we call decentralized innovation. People must come up with their own solutions. So what these ICT platforms do, information communication technology platforms do, is that they give that necessary condition, let's say. What happens on top of that is about human innovation, right? So there could be somebody, let's take a simple case of a doctor in Bangladesh who was given one of the Gates Foundation awards, the very first foundation award. All that he did was, without internet, with the old voice capability, all the women who were coming in for prenatal checkups, he said, give me a telephone number, right? He collected telephone numbers from all the women who came for prenatal checkups. And from that point, there's a timetable that the health workers have. And the health workers would follow up, because telephone calls are very cheap in Bangladesh. And remember, you can assume that everybody can give a telephone number. Even if it's not their own, somebody in their household will have a telephone. Now, we couldn't make that assumption 10, 15 years ago, but now we can, right? So that very simple thing, and a couple of spreadsheets inside the public health office. And he managed to get the inoculation rate up by a significant amount. And now you know what inoculation rates are about, right? If we get the inoculation rates up, everybody's health benefits. It's what we call a positive externality. It's a benefit to even those who were not inoculated. So because this Dr. Amjad pulled this off with very simple technology, made possible by the existence of electronic connectivity, made possible by the assumption that he could make that these women would have access to a phone, could be called, he was recognized as a worldwide winner of the first Gates Foundation Award. Now that, I think, is development, because what does it do? It brings down child mortality, it improves public health, and when we look at the numbers, Bangladesh has got better child mortality numbers than Nepal.
This is really interesting, Dr. Samarajiva. Could you tell us access to ICT tools, that of the people living in South Asia? You are doing research in many countries, carrying out the surveys. Could you tell us the access to ICT tools, be it in health or agriculture or any specific areas?
So we have, of course, I'm sure there are many things in Nepal, but as I said, we are just beginning to engage with Nepal. So I won't tell you anything about your country. I will tell you about the other areas. So we've had, let's take a simple example. There is a service that relies entirely on old technology, that is feature phones, not smartphones, called GoBeMe. Now, we did some of the original field testing and so on about 8 years ago. And now GoBeMe means friend of the farmer.
It's in Sri Lanka.
Yes. And the beauty of this is it's not a project, right? When we were doing it, it was a project, right? But it's no longer a project. It was taken by the largest mobile operator in the country, and they took it on as a CSR, corporate social responsibility project. That is, they weren't hoping to make money on it. They were giving market information, weather information, things like that to farmers, tailored to particular crops and particular times. That's the key, tailored to crops and times, right? And now they have about 400,000 paying customers, and they have moved it out of CSR onto the for-profit side. It's a profit center. Now that, I think, is success, because here's a service that will work because people are paying, people are choosing to have it. They're not taking it because somebody gave it to them free, right? In many cases, we have situations, for example, in India, where farmers would take their crops to particular places, put them in warehouses, and they will get a certain percentage of what they put in the warehouse. These are non-perishable items. Pulses, the particular thing that we studied was about castor seeds, right? I don't even know what a castor seed is, but there is some use for it, right? So these things are kept, and as the market moves, they get about 65% of the base price, and as the market moves, they get SMSs saying, are you ready to sell? Are you ready to sell? And at some point when they say they're ready to sell, or they are given a certain market limit, and when they meet that price, the item is sold and they can come and collect their money. Again, not a project, scalable, large scale, that people can actually use. So these two examples that I gave you used only the old feature phones. But today what we are doing is we are not using feature phones. We are using, this has more computing power than the computer that handled the first space launch, right? These are very powerful things.
You are referring to the use
Smartphone.
of Facebook by people for personal use. What is your suggestion for those using Facebook and other platforms available? How can these tools be used for development?
Let's take something like, Myanmar is a very good example. In all of Southeast Asia, Facebook is extraordinarily popular, right? People don't even, if you ask them, do you use the internet? They will say no. Then they will go on to talk about Facebook, right? Because that is their primary activity. So we had a very, this is an anecdote, but anecdotes sometimes carry value. We were trying to get a bus between two towns in Myanmar, right? The website exists, but it's not updated. But that whole coordination of the buses, buying the tickets, arranging the times, everything was done on Facebook. So Facebook is not simply about frivolity. There are lots of useful things that happen to be done on Facebook because that's where the people are. So we could agree that there is a lot of frivolous activity going on Facebook. But then people want some fun too. Let them have fun and let them have more what we call instrumental uses based on this decentralized capability that Facebook offers.
Well, there is a frequent use of the terminology digital world. Some people, some countries in India or Bangladesh, they have already started saying digital India or digital Bangladesh.
Right.
What is digital world? How can it be best utilized for development?
Well, these are slogans, right? Let's put some meaning into them. What it really means is that the real potential of communication technology or information and communication technology is the ability to transcend the barrier of space and transcend the barrier of time. Those are the two key things. Very abstract, but that's what really it does, right? Which means that you can take buyers who are limited to a narrow area for their markets for buying things, agricultural produce or something like that. We can open up a larger area for them. You can take the agricultural producer and he can now sell to more people a larger geographical area than he used to be able to. Now, of course, other things have to be in place, right? You need to have the transportation systems, the roads and all that kind of stuff has to be there. But what the technology does is that it allows the prices to be communicated and the markets to be merged, right? So that is a wonderful thing to have happen. The other thing is, we can look at, baby pictures and what happened in the past, right? Which used to be in books and so on. Now it can be immediately retrieved. That is getting over the barrier of time, right? So if you look at these things, I'll just give you one example of how it can be directly applied to modern day development needs. Sri Lanka, where I come from, we got currently a project running because we were requested to do this project by the Fruit and Vegetable Exporters Association. So we are not pushing it on them, they asked us to do it. They are exporting fruits and vegetables to Europe. Europe, as you know, has got many health and phytosanitary standards. Too much chemical residue, it will be rejected. Some little insect is in the container, the whole container will be burnt, incinerated. So they were having some problems because Sri Lanka is a smallholder country. They don't buy from large farms, they buy from smallholders. Now the smallholders are not following the European standards. which are called good agricultural practices. They are called GAP standards. So they were working with the government agriculture department, which has many people, very many research scientists, PhDs, and they were asking us to develop some method where smartphones could be used by the farmers to help them to keep up with the GAP standards, the agricultural standards, not to put too much chemicals, things like that, which I am very much in favor of, because we feel that domestic produce is unnecessarily doused with chemicals and things like that. So we are running, I don't have the conclusions to tell you about, but we are running a relatively effective test where some farmers are using smartphones, and the GAP standards have been translated into their language or my language. Drop down menus, they can select what they want depending on the crop. There's a capability, as you know, these are all cameras, take pictures, and the pictures can be sent to the agriculture department. They have a call center there, and the call center used to only take calls on the phone, voice only, but now we are working with the government trying to expand it to a situation where they'll take email and photographs and all kinds of inputs and help the farmers. So this is a happy situation where the government sees it as a priority to encourage more agriculture exports. The agriculture exporters don't want to be penalized and don't want their containers burnt by the Europeans, so they are interested. The farmers want to make money, and we as researchers, we are helping them to get this kind of thing available. Now that cannot be done with ordinary phones. That requires the capabilities of a smartphone.
Do you see the possibility of utilizing such experiences in Nepal?
It could well be, but we take things one step at a time, because the first step for us is getting the interface right, because based on the research we will tweak it, make it easier for the farmers to use it, right? The idea being, remember, the idea being not that they will be inside the house and using the computer, which is the old way of doing it. Now here we are thinking they are in the field, they are with their crops, and they should be able to retrieve the information that they need when they need it while they are in the field. Sunlight, shade, all these things matter, right? So the font sizes, all these things are being tested right now. Then there is the question, the more important question is, how do you scale these things? Lots of people have brilliant ideas for projects, but projects are for 100 people, 200 people, 300 people. What we are interested in is scaling. Like I gave you with the earlier example, 300,000, 400,000 people using it, we are happy. This kind of thing has to be scaled. Now, one of the barriers that we see is at the other end, when a farmer is sending a photograph and asking for advice. I have this kind of discoloration. What can I do? How many people should be at the other end? Can you imagine if, for 200 people, there will be 2 pictures coming a day. But if you have 2,000 people, if you have 20,000 people, how many pictures will come? How will the response be from the scientists? So there, what we see is, for it to be scaled, we'll have to have image recognition technology, right? So instead of having a human being look at everything, we should have the machine or the software being able to identify various things, and only the last call, the most difficult cases, to be dealt by human beings. So that is challenging.
Well, Nepal had local level elections in 6 provinces.
I've heard.
And some of the mayors, chief of the metropolis and sub-metropolitan cities here have started saying that they are committed to, developing their cities into smart cities. Good. What is a smart city, and how do you see the relevance of smart cities here in Nepal or other countries in the South Asia?
See, in the old days, politicians had one-way communication with the people, right? You put the notices in the newspapers, you talk on radio and things like that. In a smart city, it's the key to a smart city. We can talk about Songdo in Korea, which is a smart city that was developed from the ground up. Or we can talk about India's 100 Smart Cities program. Or we can talk about Rio de Janeiro. But I won't talk about that. I'll just bring you the essence. The essence is that there must be feedback, right? Two-way communication. Not that we are calling our mayor all the time, but that the mayor understands that the garbage has not been collected. The mayor understands that this particular road has got congestion, right? That is the feedback. So how do we get this feedback? One of the simplest things that I think the mayor, the municipalities, the local government authorities here can do is to, let's start simple, right? And these are things that I have worked with governments on. Have a call center, a government call center, right? That is, when people have concerns, let them call. Start with a call center, just voice, right? Because when we are talking about politics, not like even the farms, that's a commercial activity, right? Where we can assume that the farmers can purchase a smartphone. We can't assume that with citizens, right? So we must make it as democratic, as egalitarian as possible. So we can now assume, like Dr. Amjad in Bangladesh did, we can assume that everybody can make a phone call. We are capable, we can assume that now. So let them make phone calls in their language, and let that, what is on the other end, be some kind of formal call center, not people picking up phones, but the call coming into a single number, a single gateway, right? Short code, short number, and it being distributed to different operators, and they need not be experts in sewerage or roads or anything like that. They should be pulling up from the computer. They should be pulling up from a database what the relevant information is. At what time is the office open for the obtaining of this kind of license, and what is the fee, and what do I have to bring? That kind of information should be given. Now, depending on the kind of calls that come, you can analyze it. You can analyze the calls. That's called data analytics, right? So depending on that, we can now fine tune the delivery of municipal services to those particular areas. Now, there's some wonderful stories. I think people may have heard of Mayor Bloomberg, who was the mayor of the city of New York. Of course, you know, Bloomberg is all about computers and information and all that stuff. Bloomberg Financial Services. So when he became mayor, he put in a huge amount of focus on data analytics to what they call 311. Their short code was 311. So much so, and then you run models on the kinds of calls that you're getting. So every Friday you're getting complaints about noise levels. Every Monday you're getting complaints about garbage not being collected on time. So now that gives insight, that's feedback. Not people calling, but from the data, aggregated information is going to the manager saying there's some problem with garbage collection in that particular area at that particular day, time. Every week it's happening. There's something going on. Let's go and investigate it. Now that is a smart city, a very easy smart city. So let's not go to the very expensive models that IBM and all these people were selling in Rio de Janeiro with control centers and big screens and all that, and sensors under every parking space. What I keep saying is, you know, you can do a lot with the existing technology.
Well, Dr. Samarajiva, there are a lot of things to discuss, but we are coming to the end of the show. Do you have to say anything to our audience that I have left to ask you?
Well, the basic thing is, for all these wonderful things, we must have more people connected electronically. We must have broadband throughout Nepal. We must have broadband irrespective of whether people are rich or poor, irrespective of where they live, whether they are elderly, whether they are disabled or not. We must have that connectivity as a necessary condition for anything else that we want to do. And I think that's what we are focusing on right now. I'm teaching a course on broadband policy and regulation. I've got some very interesting people from Nepal, and our whole objective is that once they are informed, once they know where to look for information, they will do the job. And we will hopefully become redundant.
Well, Dr. Samarajiva, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Dear audience, time now to wrap up the show. Keep watching us. See you next week. Namaste.